is week 5 of our What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do series. Hard to believe that we're wrapping up Joseph's story today. And we're going to be talking about payback today. What do you do when someone who has hurt you is in a situation where you can hurt them? Do you choose to forgive them or do you choose to get your revenge? We're going to talk through that today. We just want to encourage you as we are moving through the month of July that Circle C is doing their summer camp online experience that we are joining in as a ministry. So we want to encourage you to check out what's happening there by clicking on the link that we're going to throw here in the video and just join the 7-week experience. Even if you're starting a couple weeks in, you got time to go back and check out some of the other videos. And then we've got some exciting things happening over the next several weeks that's going to set us up for the next several months in online student ministry. So we want you guys to stay tuned on all of our social media platforms as we start announcing some of the things that we're going to be working on. And so today, as we get ready to close out this series, let's get our hearts and minds ready and let's spend some time in worship.
So, when you don't know how to do something, how to fix something, or how something works. What do? Ask a teacher? Ask your parents? Ask your friends? Ask someone you really know and trust? No! You go to the internet and ask some randos. But I'm not talking about creeps here, I hope. No, I mean the people of the internet! You know, those people who make how-to videos. Because chances are, if you're trying to figure out something, someone on the internet has already figured it out for you. Things like, how do I unsend a text? No. How do I do a winged eyeliner? How do I get rid of the zit by Friday night? How do I get out of gym class? How do I screen cap Snapchat without getting caught? They'll never know. But then there are things in life that don't have an easy fix, that don't have a simple solution, that don't have a how-to video. Things like what to do when you have problems with family, or when it seems like you have no control in your life, or what to do when someone has done something to you. I mean, clearly, they gotta go. The truth is, there's a lot of life that doesn't have a solution you can just find online. So how do you know what to do when you don't know what to do?
All right, so I've talked a lot about my experiences in middle school. Middle school was rough for me, and like a classic middle school guy, I had some bullies. And there was one bully in particular. This guy picked on me from 7th grade all the way up to 9th grade. And I remember it was my last day of 9th grade, and it was the awards assembly, and they were giving out all the different things. And I had gotten some kind of special award because I was a pretty good kid when I was in school. And as I was walking back to my seat, this guy who picked on me all the time, every day would call me the most inappropriate names and just made my life very miserable, looked at me and said something that I can't share on camera. But for whatever reason, in that moment, something stirred inside of me, and I took my hand and I smacked him on the back of the head as hard as I could.
Hey! 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 Hey!
I mean, it was so loud that several people around it heard it and reacted to what I did. And as I started to go back to my seat, he looked me in the face and he says, "You're dead." And I thought, well, this is it. I mean, I'm never going to make it to high school. As soon as I walk out of this auditorium, he's going to kill me. And sure enough, as soon as I walked out of that auditorium, he was right there ready to destroy me. And I probably would have died that day if it wouldn't have been a friend of mine who was a girl that got between me and him and told him that if he touched me, it was going to be over. Now, he didn't question her because this friend of mine had 2 older brothers who were in high school, who were pretty big dudes. And so for the rest of that day, this bully didn't bother me, and I got payback. It's like I've been holding in that hit all year long. And then what was great was I didn't get to see this guy over the summer because we didn't have social media back then. So when you left school, you left school. And then when I came back to high school, I grew like a foot. When I ran into him in the hallways, I was way bigger than what he was. And I didn't have to worry about bullies ever again. But man, I remember that day. I remember it like it was yesterday. I just took my hand back and smacked him on the back of the head. Kind of embarrassed him, especially when he was challenged later on by a girl and backed down. And I got my payback. And if you don't know what payback is when somebody hurts you, they get hurt. And there's a lot of different ways that payback can take place. One is a public payback. Like this is something that happens that you do to this person that's very public. Everybody can see it, and the person that's hurting you gets hurt. And then there's something called passive payback. Passive payback is when you do something to get somebody who's got you, but you don't do it so publicly. So whether you spread rumors about them, or whether you post some things about them or say some things behind their back, it's kind of like this secret way to hurt them. Or there's the third option, which I think a lot of people do, and that's the imaginary payback. It's you sitting at home or sitting in the classroom imagining how you would hurt or how this person could get hurt who has spent so much time hurting you. Now, payback is something that we deal with and we think about because we believe that it's justice when somebody who hurts us ultimately gets hurt, which leads us probably to the most satisfying payback of all, and that is watching someone fail. I mean, it's really what all these paybacks have in common, whether it's public, whether it's passive, or whether it's imaginary. In the end, we just want to see the people that hurt us fail and get hurt. And you probably have experienced some of this before, right? Like that your ex, like the girl or guy who dumped you viciously and broke your heart, very publicly and very painfully gets dumped by somebody else. That's payback. Or, the person that made fun of you in third grade, or the person that bullied you in middle school, does something embarrassing or gets hurt in some way in high school. We would call that payback. And here's the thing. If you live long enough, you're probably going to deal with somebody who's going to hurt you. And that someone that hurts you at some point in their life is going to be in a position where they could get hurt. And when that happens right in front of you, you have a very important decision to make that's going to affect their life. And most importantly, it's going to affect your life. So here we are. It's hard to believe. We've been hanging out in this series, What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. We've been hanging out here for 5 weeks. And today we are going to wrap up this series. And we are sticking with Joseph. We started at the beginning of his story. And today we are going to wrap up the end of his story. And so Joseph's whole life can be found in the book of Genesis. And it is a wild, crazy life. For starters, he was favored by his father, born as the youngest of his family. And it's not his fault that he's the favorite. There's a lot of family drama that's taking place that's outside of his control. But then unfortunately, Joseph is a dreamer, and he has these dreams that ultimately would be very important in his life, but he doesn't know how to read the room. And so what's the worst thing you can tell people who don't like you already is to reveal a dream that God has given you that one day you're going to rule over them. And so what happened was the hatred that Joseph's brothers had for him became so strong that they wanted to kill him. Well, they didn't kill him, but they decided to sell him as a slave. So Joseph goes from free man to slave man, works himself up in his position as the highest slave in his house, gets accused of some things that he didn't do, gets thrown in prison, goes from the lowest prisoner to the highest prisoner, helps a guy get back into his job, and then is forgotten about for 2 years. But as we talked about last week, 2 years later, Joseph is given the opportunity to stand before Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and he interprets these dreams that Pharaoh has, and Pharaoh reinstates Joseph as the second highest in command. And so here we have Joseph, and the dream that Pharaoh had, he had a dream where there would be 7 years of harvest and there'd be 7 years of famine has come to pass. And so Joseph has done a great job managing all of Egypt during these 7 years of harvest, and now 7 brutal years of famine has hit. And one of the families that has been affected by this famine is Joseph's family. It's his brothers and his father, and they're in a different land, and they are struggling through this famine. So Jacob, Joseph's father, sends the brothers into Egypt to beg for food. Like, this is a crazy moment, that what's about to happen is that Joseph is going to come face to face with the brothers that sold him into slavery and took basically his entire life away from him. And so this moment in the scriptures is very deep. You can find it through chapters 42 through chapters 50. And so we can't cover all those chapters in this little bit of time. So we're just going to be hanging out in chapter 45. But there's a lot of different things that play out as these face-to-face interactions. And there's a couple of them that takes place between Joseph's brothers and Joseph without them knowing who Joseph is. But finally, we've come to the part in the moment in the story where Joseph is about to reveal himself to his brothers and say, hey, I'm the brother that you sold into slavery. And so in Genesis 45, 1 through 3, it says this: Joseph could no longer control himself before all of his attendants, and he cried out, have everyone leave my presence. So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still living? But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. So here's this crazy scene where Joseph's brothers are before Joseph, and he just reveals himself, like just out of nowhere says, hey, remember that brother that you sold into slavery that you probably think has been dead or whatever? Like, it's me. I'm that guy. And they're so terrified and so scared in that moment, they can't even talk. Can you imagine the tension in this room? What's going through their minds, what's going through Joseph's minds. I mean, if there was ever you're going to get what's coming to you moment, that's this moment right here. I mean, Joseph is the second most powerful guy in all of Egypt. If he wants these guys to be slaves, they be slaves. If he wants these guys to be dead, they be dead. He can do anything he wants to these guys in this moment. But again, going back to the same thing we've been saying these last 5 weeks, throughout Joseph's life, there's been one key truth. Despite the fact that everything is always constantly changing on him, he's constantly trying to figure out what to do when he doesn't know what to do. The one thing that has remained true is this: God was with Joseph. And so because God was with Joseph, Joseph is able to do what he's about to do next. And in verse 4-7, it says this: Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." When they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance." Like, this is insane. But in this moment, when Joseph has a chance to get the revenge that he is deserved, it's really the justice that he's deserved for the atrocities that took place to him, Joseph chooses something else. And there is only one reason that Joseph could have responded in this way, and that reason is this: he had already forgiven his brothers. He'd already forgiven them for the things that they had done. You see, when Joseph looks at them and says, "Don't be distressed, don't feel anguish over what you did to me," here's what he was doing. He was acknowledging their wrong and his hurt without creating more hurt. Because isn't this the reality of what we deal with when people hurt us? Whether it's a bully or a friend or a significant other or a family member, that when somebody hurts us, in the end, we just want to acknowledge that we were hurt. And we want to say out loud that what you did hurt me, because the reality is there's nothing in that moment that can be done or even be said that can take away the pain from the past. So how do we acknowledge those things without now creating more hurt and more pain? Because Joseph could have done that. He could have killed his brothers and he could have saved, or he could have put his brothers and made them slaves. That would have been an acknowledgement of the pain. That would have been him saying, "What you did to me was wrong," but that would have just created more hurt. It would have hurt Joseph's father back home. It would have hurt the family that these men were connected to, and it would have hurt them. But Joseph decided to go a completely different route by choosing forgiveness. And by saying it out loud, but saying, "I will no longer keep this pattern of hurt going. I will choose to forgive you." And here's the reality. We know that Joseph had already forgiven his brothers because only a healed person could do what Joseph did. Only somebody who was healed. And the reason why Joseph was healed was because of his relationship with God. Because Joseph was focused on something that was much bigger and much greater than himself. Because Joseph chose forgiveness over payback. And so somewhere between being sold as a slave and being reunited with his family, Joseph gave his heart to God, and he allowed God to be central to his healing. Like, that's the key. God was central to his healing. And here's my guess. If you're dealing with some hurt and dealing with some pain from your past or even your present, maybe one of the reasons why you're not able to get past it or beyond it is because God is not central to the healing taking place in your life. Maybe what's central to your healing is payback. Maybe what's central to your healing is revenge. Maybe what's central to your healing is seeing them get done to them what they did to you. But the reality is, when you do that, you're just creating more cycles of hurt and pain, and it will keep looping over and over again. But Joseph chose something different. He chose to put God in the center of his pain so God could become the center of his healing. Because here's the thing, forgiveness in this moment wasn't just for the brothers, but forgiveness was for Joseph. And the same thing is true with me and you. When you forgive somebody, that forgiveness is really for you. Because you could forgive somebody and they might be thankful for it and accept it. You could forgive somebody and they might not care. Matter of fact, you could forgive somebody and they're not even around anymore for you to even give them forgiveness or face them. We can't control what the people outside of our lives do to us and then ultimately do with their lives, but what we can control is what we do. And so forgiveness is really about you. Forgiveness is you being willing to let it go. And so what happens when you choose forgiveness is you get something that's way better than payback. And that's reconciliation. And so this is where we see God do the impossible things in relationships. I mean, I've been around for a while, and I've seen relationship issues through all the different stages of life. And what I have seen that never gets old is incredible reconciliation between two people that are hurt, that from the outside perspective seems like it's completely possible that these two people could ever be in the same room together, could ever love each other again, only to find that that kind of reconciliation, that comes from God. Because only God understands our hearts like that. Only God can heal people like that. And only God can take two hurt people, put them together in a room, and bring them back together. And that's exactly what happens in this moment. That it's only because of God that Joseph was able to not only look at his brothers and forgive them, but even say, the things that you've done to hurt me, God used those to put me in this position to save all of us. So, when you don't know what to do, and someone has hurt you, and you don't know how to move on, and you don't know how to respond, and you don't know how to deal with it, I would just encourage you to pursue peace instead of payback. Pursue peace instead of payback, because when you pursue peace, you fight for the relationship, right? You can either fight in the relationship or fight for the relationship, but you can't do both, right? Like you can either try to be right, and you can try to win, and you can try to be on top, or you can fight for peace. You can fight for resolution. You can fight for love. And when you pursue peace, that's exactly what you're doing. You're fighting for the relationship, even when the person has hurt you, even when you don't understand why it's happening. You can choose to let God be the center of that situation to get you through that. And when you pursue peace, you lay down your right to get payback. You see, in that moment, you get to choose God's story of reconciliation instead of your story of revenge. I mean, that's really as simple as that. The story of the gospel, the story of Jesus, is a story of reconciliation, that we as human beings, through our sin, have rejected Jesus and have chosen to do whatever we want. But Jesus came to reconcile us to God. He came to forgive us. He came to restore us. So you can choose God's path of reconciliation when you lay down your payback, or you can pick your payback up and you can choose revenge, which scripture and history and any wise person in your life is going to look at you and tell you never, ever works. And all it does is create more hurt and more pain in your life. Because when you choose peace, you don't only have peace with the people that hurt you, but most importantly, you have peace with yourself. Because again, you can't control the people outside of your life. You don't know where they're going, where they're going to end up. And unfortunately, even the people that love you the most, you don't know how long they're going to be with you. But the one thing you're going to have forever is yourself and God. And so when you choose this path, you don't just get peace with everybody else, but you get peace with you, which means you get to lay your head down at night and you get to go to sleep and you get to know that God has it. He's covered it, He's taken care of it, and you don't have to deal with that anymore. What to do when you don't know what to do. As we wrap up this 5-week series that I hope has been an encouragement to you and has challenged you in the different areas of your life and your faith, I just want to look back on where we've been. What do you do when you don't know what to do? You need to pay attention to how you affect the people in your life, particularly your family. Listen, you have influence, and that's going to be good influence or that's going to be bad influence, and it just depends on what you choose to do with it. And you need to understand that through all the things that you go through in your life, the ups and the downs, the good and the bad, God is with you. Scripture says He will never leave us and He will never forsake us. And if God is for us, who can be against us? Just know that what you're going through right now, wherever you're at on the spectrum, God is with you. He cares about you. He is fighting with you, and he is fighting for you. And when you don't know what to do because of your relationship with God, you should just always do the next right thing. What is the next right thing to do? What is the thing that Jesus would do? What is the thing that God requires of you to do? What is the thing that love is asking you to do in this moment? And that's the thing that you should do when you don't know what to do. And when you don't know what to do, you should remember that your problems are positioning you for your purpose. That everything that's happening in your life is happening because God has allowed it to happen so that it can shape you and form you to be the person that God has set you to be, with your family, with your friends, and the world that you are living in and shaping with the decisions that you make. And your problems are positioning you for a purpose. And finally, as we talked about today, when you don't know what to do, I'm begging you, pursue peace instead of payback. Let God be central to your healing. Choose reconciliation over revenge. And when you do that, watch what God does in the lives of everybody around you, even the people that aren't even involved, that are watching you and watching what you're doing, and watch what it does in your heart. Because you don't just get peace with everybody in your life, but most importantly, you get peace with yourself. And I promise you, and anybody that's ever gone through that internal torment, that internal struggle, that internal pain, peace with yourself, to be able to breathe easy, to be able to know you're the person that God's called you to be, to be able to know that even in the moments when you don't know what to do, you can still do the right thing. That's priceless. That's what helps us lay our heads down at night. That's what helps us go to sleep. That's what helps us love people with a clear conscience. That's what helps us to ultimately be the light that God has called us to be. And that's what I'm hoping for you guys. I'm hoping that that is what challenges you, inspires you, and encourages you as you're living out your faith. And as we wrap up this series, I just want to pray for you as you're walking through these things. Jesus, I just thank you so much for this moment that we get to share together. I just thank you for those that are watching right now, that they would be inspired and encouraged, God, by your truth, that there is a better solution. Payback is not the answer. Reconciliation is. And God, help us to allow you to be the center of our healing and to forgive others. Because it's not just important for them, but most importantly, God, it's so critical for us that we're able to forgive so that we can move on, that we can be what you need us. God, we just thank you for your love and your grace and your example of forgiveness and mercy that you show to us every single day. God, when we don't know what to do, help us to trust you and to know that you've got us. Jesus, we thank you and we love you. We say these things in your name. Amen. Well, I just want to say thank you again for hanging out with us as we wrap up this 5-week series. I can't believe it's over. I just want you to know we've got some exciting things that are going to be coming up in the next couple weeks that are setting ourselves up for a great next couple months. And we're so thankful that you're tuning in every single week. As always, it's our hope that you are encouraged and empowered in your faith by the things that we say. We love you guys, and we cannot wait to see you next week.
So Alex has lived in Sin City. So what we're going to be doing for virtual camp and during this segment is I'm going to be bringing people on like Alex, and I'm going to be asking them about their story, about how they came to know Christ, and how the week's theme really tied into that.